The old train rumbled down the tracks, its wooden slats creaking and groaning with each passing mile. It was an abandoned vehicle, left to decay in the desolate countryside. Yet, it seemed to be moving of its own accord. Lena stood at the edge of a platform, her eyes fixed on the train as it chugged along. She had always been fascinated by trains, and this one held a special allure for her. Rumors swirled that anyone who boarded would never leave again. But Lena was not deterred, she felt an inexplicable pull towards the locomotive. As she stepped onto the platform, the train seemed to slow its pace, as if waiting just for her. The air grew thick with anticipation, and a chill ran down Lena's spine. She approached the entrance, hesitating at the threshold. Suddenly, the doors creaked open by themselves, beckoning her inside. Lena stepped into the dimly lit carriage, where rows of empty seats seemed to stare back at her like ghostly apparitions. The air was heavy with an otherworldly presence, and she felt a creeping sense of dread as she made her way deeper into the train. She tried to flee, but it was too late, the doors slammed shut behind her, trapping her inside. And then, in the darkness, Lena heard the sound of wheels screeching, followed by an unearthly whisper, "You're not going anywhere." The last thing she saw was a figure standing at the end of the carriage, watching her with cold, dead eyes, before everything went black. The old train rumbled down the tracks, its wheels screeching in protest as it carried its last passengers to their final destination. Dr. Emma Taylor had volunteered for this unusual experiment, hoping to study the effects of isolation on the human mind. As she settled into her seat, a sense of unease crept over her. The train was eerily quiet, with only the occasional creak and groan breaking the silence. She tried to focus on her notes, but her eyes kept drifting towards the window, where the passing landscape blurred together in an endless expanse of gray. As night began to fall, Emma's thoughts turned to the experiment's true purpose. She was not just a test subject, but also a participant in a psychological study designed to push individuals to their limits. The train would be traveling through a tunnel for several hours, with no external stimuli or communication possible. She wondered if anyone had considered the potential consequences of such an isolation. As the darkness deepened, Emma's imagination began to run wild. She heard whispers on the wind, and her own thoughts seemed to take on a life of their own. The train rumbled through the tunnel, its lights flickering like fireflies in the night. And then, without warning, everything went black. When Emma came to, she was alone, surrounded by an endless expanse of darkness that seemed to have no end. She realized with horror that she had been trapped on this train for years, and there would be no escape. The last train had become her eternal prison. The old train rumbled down the tracks, its wheels screeching in protest as it carried its last passengers to their final destination. Dr. Emma Taylor, a renowned psychologist, sat in her seat, observing the other riders with interest. As she watched, one passenger after another began to act strangely. A young couple's conversation turned from flirtatious to aggressive, their words dripping with venom. An elderly man became convinced that his wife was trying to poison him and frantically searched for a bottle of water in every seat pocket. The passengers' behavior grew increasingly erratic, as if they were trapped in some sort of collective nightmare. Dr. Taylor's curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to investigate further. She approached one of the more agitated riders, a young woman who seemed particularly distressed. As Dr. Taylor listened attentively to the woman's concerns, she noticed something peculiar every time the train lurched or jolted. The woman would gasp in terror, as if she were afraid of being hurt. As the last stop approached, the passengers' behavior reached a fever pitch. The young couple began to scream at each other, while the elderly man became convinced that he was going mad and begged for help. Dr. Taylor realized with growing unease that something sinister was at play, but what? And as she turned back to her seat, she saw that the woman's eyes had changed, now glowing with an unnatural light in the darkening tunnel ahead.